Good morning, everyone. This is Rachel from Talent Storm for another edition of Talent Storm Talks, where we get to talk to really interesting people in the learning and development industry. So today's conversation is with Laura Lee-Gibbs, founder of Learnfox, a boutique digital learning consultancy. And just to say how this conversation came about, I've been doing bits of consultancy for organizations for a long time, but recently this work has shifted. So it's nearly solely around digital learning systems. And what's been interesting to me is this work has also been dealing with external audiences, so not internal employees, but looking at, well, the first big piece I did was for an association, for example. So, and it's because I've been going down that road that I have been wanting to find out more about the digital learning space. And I was lucky enough to be introduced to Laura at the start of this year. And we've actually worked together on a few projects this year, which has been really, really fun. And we've had lots of really great conversations around digital learning, and particularly the kind of nuance and the difference between catering for internal audiences compared to external audiences. And we wanted to explore that a bit more, which is why we're having this conversation. And yeah, so external audiences could be anyone that's selling a product, maybe people that are offering training as part of their business. It could be customer support. And so there are some fundamental differences about that. And one area in particular is around having a product mindset and thinking of the learning and the content, the material as a product, which is what we're going to dive into today. So this conversation will be of interest to anyone that's looking to better package and market learning programs, and especially if you're not doing that already and you want to move into customer or partner education, yeah, or if you're already there and want to improve things. So, Laura, could you tell us a bit about your background and how you came to be where you are today?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Thanks for that introduction. Yes, so really good to be here. So I've worked in the digital learning world for 18 years now, and I've worked on both the vendor side, the client side, in lots of different roles and capacities. So I've implemented a lot of LMSs across dozens of organizations. I've been the trainer, I've been the project manager, I've been the platform owner. I've run a managed service, so managed a learning management system for lots of different organizations coming into that. Yeah, so literally kind of worn all the hats, being a project manager, also head of product development, where I've managed and kind of grown a product in line with what the customer needs are as well. And for the last 6 years, I've been running my own digital learning company, which is Learnfox.
Fantastic, thank you. So, why do you think a different mindset is needed for external audiences to internal? But I guess before we do that, let's just really clarify what we mean by an external audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So external audiences could include membership associations. It could be software companies who are training their customers on their particular software. It could be the extended enterprise models. So corporates who are training maybe their sellers, their suppliers, their partners. Or it could be indeed training companies who are either selling their training and their expertise to other companies or to consumers, so B2B model or B2C. So there's quite a lot of variety and very different use cases within that external audience use case. But there's a few things that might be common that they're trying to do, which might benefit from having more of a product mindset. So within all of those examples, they're going to be, needing to train external audiences on their particular products and educate them. and it could well be more competitive than it might be with your internal typical L&D use case, because you don't have the captive audience like you would do in that scenario. So there might be other competitors, whether that's a software company, obviously it's a bit more obvious. A membership association might have other competitors as well. A charity, less obvious, but they're competing for the attention of who they're trying to educate, whether that's the public, or indeed they might be trying to sell their training to corporates, for example, or even their volunteers, but they're competing for that kind of attention from the end user, or from their audiences. So it needs to be more competitive, because you just don't have that captive audience in the same way as for the internal use case.
Yeah, no, you're quite right. And I think that's what's been interesting for me to see as well in the organisations I've worked with and spoken to over the last couple of years. And I think, I mean, you mentioned charities there, for example, and I think a lot of charities are realising this can be a good way of bringing in revenue,
Yeah.
is to offer education around, or awareness or support for their stakeholders. And associations as well. It's a huge part of the revenue. So you're quite right. But even companies where they're just providing customer support on their product, that then they might not be charging for it, but it then keeps people tied into their product. It's part of the service. It's part of added value. So yeah, I've seen lots of different use cases just in recent times as well. So, okay. So with the companies that you've worked with, given you've got, many years experience, what's the experience level been for those that are usually in charge of this type of project?
So this, it can often be that the people coming to me from these type of organizations are very different than with the kind of more internally facing training from an L&D department. It literally could be, the MD coming, it could be the director of client services, it could be the head of training, or something. But usually, or more often than not, there's not as much kind of internal expertise and knowledge and experience of the world of digital learning, training needs analysis, learning design, and those things that might be more better, well resourced in an internal L&D department with those expertise in place. So there's quite a big education piece needed there, and kind of taking them on a journey, without overwhelming, because there is a lot there, but taking them on a journey to actually just step back and look at the wider picture, and first of all think, who are the people, who are the audiences, what is the content, so what is it that you're trying to educate them in, what format is that in at the moment, what format does it need to be in, and then what's the technology that might enable that to come together and be able to deploy that education, and looking at those three parts, so people, content, and technology, and how they interrelate to each other in terms of what's needed, and really just stepping back and starting with a needs analysis.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like the people, content, and technology approach, because often I think the people aspect gets forgotten. And I think particularly sometimes working with vendors, the people that sell the technology, they're so used to talking technology and systems and features all day that if you come to a platform and you've never had to implement a platform before, then there's such a big change management curve that people have to go through with understanding how these things work, how they should be used, how they need to be resourced, and so on. So I know, just from my experience last year working with an association and introducing them to the world of here's a platform that you need to use, a learning platform, and how it works, and then getting them to think about the content when they've never had to design digital content before. There's a lot of you have to allow time for that growth and learning, don't you, and hold a special place for it.
I think as well with the people part, um, there's thinking about who are the end users and who are the, people that you're trying to educate. But with this external use case, a really important consideration in terms of people is who are you selling to? Because those people might not be the same as the people you're educating. So you've got the buyers. So for example, I'm working with a charity at the moment who packaging up their offer into kind of different differentiated products to target corporates at different levels. So, from training employees in a corporate organization about the it's a kind of hidden disability charity. So about that hidden disability, training managers and then training HR staff. But those end users are not the buyers. There's obviously a buyer in the corporate organization who would be in the L&D department. And it's also thinking about how do you differentiate that the product offer and the education that you're putting together, and how do you make it attractive and make it meet the needs, make sure that it meets the needs of the actual buyer as well. So there's thinking about different people in terms of your audience.
Yeah, that is really complicated, isn't it? And I think, and then that brings in a lot of marketing, doesn't it? So you're having to think like a marketer, and understand the
Yes.
product and what the levers are for someone to buy the product, not just about the user using the product. So yeah, so
Yeah.
there's a lot to pull together. So what else would you say a product mindset consists of?
So yeah, so I think one of the key things is always keeping the end user at the heart. So really considering the user experience and making sure that you're delivering real value. But that is, of course, for the end users who you're trying to educate, but also the buyer, as I just mentioned, because that's obviously really important as well. Um, and balancing that there's a few different things that you need to balance when you're trying to maybe create some differentiated product offerings. Maybe you've got like an online offer that's going to have wider reach and be deliver value but be less expensive to buy. Then maybe you also have a higher value option with more touch points or face to face or virtual instructor led aspects to it, so a blended offer, or maybe even some consultative touch points in there as well. And that might be a more expensive offer but actually have a smaller reach because it's for a more niche segment of your audience, for example. So yeah, thinking about those different parts, aspects, so the value, the resource needed to deliver it, the reach, and trying to work out where your sweet spot is, and having a kind of range of different offers, but also maybe not trying to do all of that at once and thinking, what's your MVP going to be? So what do you want to start with? What's your minimum viable product that's going to deliver value to your end users? So keeping that user in mind again and starting with your MVP, then having a wider vision of where you want to get to, and evolving that offer over time.
Yeah, no, that all sounds good. I think again for me, I always relate things back to internal L&D because that's where I spent my whole career. And I think when, digital learning came in, many of us naturally had a bit of a product mindset. We would deliver training in different ways. So if you've got part-time workers and they can't make the course in the daytime, then you do, an online version, or you have a downloadable resources. So I think for people from the industry, thinking a little bit in a product way should seem familiar. But as you say, if you're working with people where they haven't had to do that before, then the idea of learning content or training content, material, whatever you want to call it, as a product that can be repackaged and repurposed and delivered in different ways, whether it's blended or whether it's drip fed or done as a face-to-face workshop or done solely as a digital thing, that can feel quite strange. So there's a lot to learn, because actually all those different methods of delivering require different skills in putting it together.
Mm.
And I think
Yeah.
I mean, that's what makes our industry so challenging and exciting, isn't it? It's because, if you're good at, storyboarding, then running a workshop, it's different skills. So there's always different skills to pull in.
Yeah, and I think really when you're thinking like a product manager, you've got to really step back initially and do a really thorough needs analysis. So, interview your business stakeholders, do a survey out to your end user audiences, and gather all of that intel basically to start shaping your user personas and understanding, who are those end users, but also maybe the business back end users of the platform as well, and also your buyers, and map out user stories. So in their own, put yourself in their shoes and think, what do they need and why do they need it? And have a really, really clear set of user stories before you're even thinking about technology, way before you're thinking about how you're going to deliver it and everything. And then start mapping those to really detailed, kind of more granular functional requirements of what you're going to need the technology to be able to do, and the whole solution, including what the content needs to be able to do. So it's really stepping back and doing all that. And then when you've got that, it might be that you don't deliver all that straight away because you're just working to your minimum viable product. But then you can create a kind of pipeline of ongoing ways to develop and evolve your project that will evolve over time, because the needs will start to change as well, because nothing's static. It'll always be quite agile, because the needs of your audiences might change. Everything's changing all the time, isn't it? So you need to be able to adapt and then keep a kind of ongoing pipeline of how you're going to keep on enhancing your product and keep it competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. So having clear user personas developed at the
Yeah,
start, building out your learner
yeah.
journeys from that and using that as a starting point. And you mentioned MVP, minimum viable product. So could you maybe just describe, for those that are new to this area,
Mm.
what a minimum viable product could look like?
Yeah, so the minimum viable product is basically the minimum amount to deliver some value to your end users. So when you've got your user personas and your user stories, and you've kind of prioritized what those needs are, you then have a clear sense of what is the minimum amount that you could launch or put out there that's going to deliver some level of value. And that, so in reality, that could look like starting with launching just a particular program or product, just one flagship product or program that you're going to launch. You might well have a vision for then loads of different, follow-on programs and what have you, or different versions of that for slightly different needs. But it's just the minimum amount that you can start with. So yeah, it could be just content related, or it also could be what's the minimum amount of functionality that the platform needs to have to create a good enough user experience that's going to provide value to your end users as well. So a platform could have loads of functionality that could be configured and turned on in time, but you don't have to have all the bells and whistles initially. You just need the kind of minimum amount basically, and then you can add to that later.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. So if people come to you and work with you as they do, and this is new, they're not already offering something, they're not offering any sort of digital learning, and they're moving into this space for the first time, what does the process usually look like?
Mhm. So what we usually start with is looking at the wider vision of what they're trying to do. And then really breaking it down into looking at, who are the people, who are the audiences, what are they trying to educate them in, and what technology have they got, or what do they need. So and really stepping back and looking at those three things together, or really people and content first, shortly followed by the technology, but it's all of those three things and how they relate to each other. And it always has to start with the needs analysis, so really getting to understand the audience, and so balancing the business needs with the end user needs, because obviously the business is going to have, you know, their own business drivers and their needs, and it's balancing those two things. So really doing a really thorough needs analysis, understanding those audiences and mapping those requirements, and then prioritizing them. Prioritizing is really important as well, because that then enables you to work towards an MVP, and yeah, just focus on what's needed rather than getting overwhelmed with trying to do everything all at once.
Okay, sounds good. And you do that by stakeholder interviews and surveys and workshops?
Yeah, so when I work with clients, I have a number of ways of doing it. So either I might do that, and you know, for the client, so I will go out and do the stakeholder interviews, and you know, create the surveys, and do all that requirements mapping. But I can also run workshops with the client organization to help empower them how to do it as well. So kind of guiding them and holding their hand through the process and giving them the tools and templates to do that themselves. It really depends on how much internal resource and you know, time and capacity they have to do it. So yeah, so absolutely you're right. Starting with those things, the stakeholder surveys and analysis, and user personas and user stories, and then mapping the requirements.
Okay. And then yeah, once you've got their roadmap, it's then helping with implementation if they then need that.
Yeah, and I mean, well, yeah, even before that, you know, then helping them audit their content. You know, what shape is it in at the moment, and that might be, it's literally just information in people's heads. You know, it could literally be that, and then how do you get it out, and you know, how are you going to deliver that, design that into a format that can be delivered and you know, consumed by your end users. So helping them with that content audit, you know, it might not be that, it might be lots of PowerPoints and lots of different things that exist already, but it's then helping them shape that and identify how they can slice and dice and deliver that in the most engaging way.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. And yeah, when you mentioned audit, you just reminded me of one of the projects that we worked on this year, which was helping an organization that already had something in place, but they wanted fresh eyes on it to help decide, you know, how they tighten it up and make it better and more fit for purpose for expansion and expanding their audience. So it works well at any level, doesn't it? People are already
Yes.
offering something. It's, you know, you can still have fresh eyes and look
I
at
think
what's there.
it just helps, I think, to provide that structure and have all the tools and templates that have been tried and tested so many times, and be able, you know, because often when the organization are confronted with having the enormity of this to kind of do, they don't quite know where to start. It's not always that clear where to start. So it's providing that structured approach, and having the tools and templates to help, you know, start to shape things and provide that clarity. Yeah, and kind of guide a way through the enormity of it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're quite right, because it can be overwhelming. I mean, your three pillars that you use, the people, content, technology, that's a lot of things there. So yeah, it would be hard for someone to make a roadmap of priorities from that. And I was just thinking about another project we worked on that was a project management consultancy. And for them, you know, really, it was just a little bit of upskilling and just getting some things set up, but also skilling them up so that they can do the work going forward. And that's
Yes,
very
yeah.
easy to do, isn't it? To help people and just set up some processes and then show them I mean, I set up some little training videos for the client so that now they can do the work in their system themselves. So sometimes it's just pointing people in
Yeah,
the right direction to go, isn't it?
it is. And I've another thing, I worked with a software company earlier this year and ran some workshops for them to help get them clarity over the whole vision. And then we did a couple of series of workshops. So there was a whole workshop on the people, a whole workshop on the content, and a whole workshop on the technology. But I did that in collaboration. With a visual thinking consultant. So she does live drawing during the workshop itself, so that she's actually drawing and visualizing what's being talked about, which is so powerful for
Yeah.
aligning stakeholders and creating something really inspiring that they can then put these visual panels up on the walls in the office. They can share them really easily, they can add them to kind of business PowerPoint presentations to engage other people in the business as well. It becomes something really powerful to really pull people together and take them on that journey.
Yeah, I really love that. And I know you've shared with me that you're using a visual, what's she called, visual designer.
Visual thinking
Visual
consultant.
thinking, yeah, I love
Yeah,
that because I'm a visual thinker and I think it's a really
yes,
good way to cut through the complexity and pull all the
yeah,
issues out. And, we're all fed up of seeing lists, aren't we? We don't need another list.
yeah,
You need to see a
absolutely.
picture and then you can understand it and then the themes just pop out. So I think that's a really fun way to do workshops, to have someone drawing it as you're doing it live. I think that's fantastic. So just to kind of start rounding things off, what advice from everything we've talked about, what advice would you give someone that's wanting to move into delivering, training or awareness to an external audience, whether that's customer education or partner education in whatever form, what advice would you give in a nutshell?
I think, first of all, don't be overwhelmed. Step back and see the bigger picture, and use the people, content, and technology, those three pillars, to look at the bigger picture. Um, Really do the preparatory work to understand the audience needs and the business needs. So that needs analysis piece is absolutely fundamental to do before you go ahead and look at anything to do with solutions. So that bit, should come front and center. Um, have a wider vision and strategy in mind, but don't aim for perfection and just think MVP, and evolve that. So don't think about going for the big vision straight away. Always think MVP.
Do you think people struggle to keep it simple? Do you think they naturally want to put in all the bells and
Yeah,
whistles?
yeah, and I think the pressure of wanting to kind of do everything at once then can be quite paralyzing as well.
Yeah.
So have the bigger picture, have that vision, because it's inspiring, and it sets your direction and intention. But I suppose also importantly, don't be completely fixated on that bigger vision, because things will change. Inevitably, things will change. So have the bigger vision, but be prepared to then adapt and be agile as the needs change.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a key part of product thinking and design thinking, isn't it? It's that
Mm,
MVP and then being iterative and then tweaking, because it's all part of testing, isn't it? And finding out what works for
absolutely.
people.
Yeah. So always think, be iterative, keep refining, test, refine, put something else out there, test, refine, and evolve.
Okay. Excellent. So just in a nutshell then, how can people get in touch with you if they want to work with you or have a conversation to find out more? What's the best way to find you?
So my website, which is learnfox.co.uk, you can contact me through that, um, or email me, laura@learnfox.co.uk, or through LinkedIn. We can share the links, can't we? But yes, I can do consultancy with people where I can scope out a specific project and and then deliver that. But also we do these workshops, so Learnfox Labs, facilitated workshops with the live drawing. Um, we do training and upskilling internal teams as well. And also I have an online academy called the Learnfox Den. So when you do Learnfox Labs facilitated workshops, you also get access to that online academy to get all of the tools and templates and how-to videos and access to that online academy and community to help empower your teams to be more self-sufficient as well.
That's great. So you're practicing what you preach there by giving a range of different product options. So I really like that. It's been really interesting, Laura. We always like to talk. So hopefully this has been interesting to everybody watching as well. But thank you so much for your time. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Rachel.